The button has been pushed. Hello and welcome. We're coming to you live from the dungeon. And if you see, I have a very special guest on this week's podcast, Mr. Owen Murphy. And so what you'll also notice is my co-host, Shay, he's not here this week. Shay has a regular job, like regular folk. And he's dealing with BBC and not Big Black Cock. His company is actually has BBC coming in and they're interviewing him. And if he wants to share all that stuff, we can talk about it next week. But so I am so stoked to have you here. And Owen, the first thing is, what the fuck are you doing in Denver?
So I have an art show tonight at Further Frames, solo show. Further Frames is the most badass frame shop in the country, subjectively.
And he's not lying.
No, they kill it.
Is dope. And if you guys don't, go check out their Instagram.
Yeah.
You should be going to the show if you haven't. Were you doing this because a couple weeks ago we had trips, right? And
yes.
I think the first time I saw you was during that trips 2 years ago.
It was last year.
Yeah. So that was
it was 2 trips ago. So I would have done it this year, but one of my best friend's daughters got married. So I would have been there. But it all just kind of got shuffled around. Also, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard are playing on Monday at Red Rocks, and I got tickets for that. So
nice. So
I want to go.
I want to see Giz and the Lizard.
Yeah, and Geese, who I love as well.
Not Goose.
Geese. Goose is fun. Goose is great too, but I really like Geese.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I remember you just saw King Giz on the East Coast, right?
And yeah, in Richmond, I was down there. I was down in Richmond where I get my stuff printed, signing Goose posters for this weekend at Spec. And Giz was playing, so I was like, let me scoop a ticket to that. It was the hottest fucking show I've ever been to. I was dripping like I just got out of a shower because it was so muggy.
Oh God!
But it was a great show.
Well, welcome to the Colorado dry heat.
Yeah.
You may be sweaty, but not as much as you were on the East Coast.
It'll be much more comfortable than
Have you seen them before?
Yeah, I saw them in Philly pre-COVID at the Electric Factory, and it was very uncomfortable and didn't sound very good because that venue. I don't really like
just
that.
On top of each other.
Yeah, I just didn't like that venue either.
Yeah,
whatever.
And so that's where it's like crazy how these environments can change some of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do is, you were one of my favorite poster artists. I absolutely love what you do. And on this podcast, normally what we're talking about is like, what's the reason for this, right? And so I wanted to bring one of my favorite poster artists on to try to like open that door and peel away some of these layers. Because like people may know you and know your art, but they really don't, right?
No.
They only see like what is on the internet, and like if they have that chance to talk to you for a couple minutes, get a doodle on a piece, right? And then it's turn and burn. And so for me, when you were willing to have this opportunity to come and talk to me, and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to be in Denver, I'll come to your basement. I was like, fuck. Yes, yes, fucking please.
It's a dope basement.
Thank you. Shay always gives me shit for it smelling, but I pour enough eucalyptus oil on this motherfucker. So it's not that bad. But so like for a Further Frame show, they're highlighting all your work, right?
Yeah, I have a couple recent pieces framed up by them, a couple originals that I just finished for hopefully
that Pretty Lights Red Rocks.
That's one of them, yeah. And then I have 2 original inks that I'm starting to get back into inks because I have the space to do it now in my studio.
Is that the double set of 50 that you're doing?
Yeah, it's 20. It's a low edition of 22.
Oh,
it's 50. I'm doing $50 for the set.
Oh, it's only $50 for the set. There's only 22 of each of them.
Yeah.
And you're selling them as a set, the 1-2, similar to like the one that I have up in my front door.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I'll have another variant for the online stuff, but they don't know that yet.
And they won't know this.
They won't know yet. Surprise!
So hopefully you motherfuckers got on that quick.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about some of this, like where you came up. How the fuck did you get into becoming a poster artist? Like for you, like where did you grow up so that people kind of understand like where you are? Because for me, I know like being born and raised in Hawaii, that plays so much into who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Right. So like where did you come up and where'd your journey start?
I grew up in Ocean City, New Jersey. It's like a small tourist beach town in
Okay.
South Jersey, right by Atlantic City. About an hour from Philly. And I grew up. My dad's an artist, and both.
Similar style of medium, or
No, he
different
did. He
artists?
did murals and decorative painting in people's homes, and he's starting to do his own like canvas fine art type stuff now. But he's also heavily influenced by music. He had the most epic. He still has like an epic bookshelf of old artists from you know spanning time. And then my mom is a music freak, so
That's awesome.
they gave me a good foundation of and like just a good foundation of music listening to
Were
as a
you
as a
going with
kid.
Dad while he was doing some of these projects? Were you being exposed to like his process? Obviously, you're seeing
Yeah,
him when he's at home, right?
yeah. Well, I would hang out in his studio, and it was always there. And he kind of taught he. I think I got my um what's the word? Just the way I look at things.
Your
Like,
perspective.
yeah, my perspective. Thank you.
Sure. Not to feed
Like,
words to you.
yeah, like I could look at like if I see a funky texture in a wall, I'm like, oh, there's a horse with a frog riding it or whatever.
Oh, so kind of like the what is it called? The Rorschach test, where
Yeah,
it's just like
some
random
sort
things
of.
and then you can
Yeah,
kind of like see something out. Or like people will do that with like
clouds.
clouds. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I got a lot of that out of him. So that was cool.
That's
And
awesome.
he also taught me how to hustle a lot. Like
As every artist
as
knows, it's
a
not easy, right?
not a lot. I mean, like a parking lot. Because I was in like seventh grade. We went to the Eagles Cowboys game, and
Fuck the Cowboys.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Wait, hold on. Are you a Philly fan?
I grew up that I don't care anymore.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I know
obviously,
y'all are playing
I fucking
tonight.
live and die with this stupid
Yeah,
Packers hat. And I'm
they're
doing
in.
this interview on Friday, so we got a big game in Brazil. But thank God I don't have to deal with that bullshit.
Yeah, but no, so growing up, he had a side hustle doing temporary airbrush tattoos in an amusement park
Oh shit.
in town.
Okay.
So like I learned how to airbrush a little bit
You
with
said that was the
that.
seventh grade.
That started in seventh grade, and we went to the Eagles game and with a big ass CO2 tank. That's what was powering the
Just
airbrush,
blasting your airbrush.
blasting people, and we got stopped by the cops, and they were like, "What's in the tank?" And we're like, I didn't know what was going on at the time. And I know now in hindsight, I'm like, damn, that was sketchy.
You're like, it's medical grade CO2.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. And yes, but we went around the parking lot and made enough money to buy tickets for the game.
Oh, to get in.
Yeah, and that
So
was
you hustled to get into the.
yeah.
That's pretty fucking cool.
So he taught me how to hustle. And then fast forward, I always liked art class in school, and I would do little posters and comics or whatever throughout school. And then I was going to community college because I didn't know if I went to regular college, I would have died. But I went to community college to become a teacher because I didn't know what else to do. And then I had an art teacher, uh, Mr. Ivy, who was like, "Oh, you're really good at this, computer art. You should maybe consider pursuing this."
Thank you, Mr. Ivy.
Yeah, thank you. And so I
Bravo to fucking
did,
him.
yeah, and I
So did
changed
you
my
go to like
major.
graphic school or?
I went to Salisbury
Oh
on the
shit.
on the
Okay.
eastern shore of Maryland.
Yeah.
It's right by the beach, which is what I was looking for.
Okay. So you got
Um,
a little bit away from home.
Little, it was just far enough that I could get
The
out.
independence, but you were
Yep,
close enough where you could still go home for the holidays.
exactly,
Bullshit you wanted.
exactly. And I had a place to go surf, and they had a good art program. My professor, Paul Flexner, I had Pam Olszewski and Paul Flexner. Pam told me to take Flexner's illustration class because she was teaching intro to poster design, where I learned Art Nouveau, Art Deco, Russian constructivism, psychedelic era.
That's awesome.
And that's
So
when
they
everything
gave you
went.
that historical foundation.
Yeah,
Right? So like just
yeah,
like when I talk about like music and seeing like Jeff Austin's String Cheese play in 2004, and then they're like, "Oh, I have a John Hartford tune," and I'm going, "Who the fuck's John Hartford?"
Yeah.
So then you started to get that foundational. So like, let's talk about like how some of that impacts you and like the influence of your art and like learn, because your teachers are obviously going to be a huge influence, right?
Absolutely.
And then that mentorship, because they're kind of teaching you the ways, and then I don't want to use another Star Wars reference, but right, it's like the fucking Jedi and the Master.
Flexner called it my Zen quest.
Oh, nice.
You know, that was the word he always used. He also raised 3 insane artists. One being who was a poster artist, and he came in for one class and showed us poster art that he did, and showed me that I could do that for a living. And that was after me discovering Rick.
So after your mind's been blown, now you have a little light bulb going.
Yeah.
This is what I can do to pay the bill.
Yeah, and simultaneously I had a screen printing class, so I kind of learned that a little bit. So like it was just this big soup of inspiration. It was just this. I was in this creative environment, learning, and figuring it out.
What kind of music were you listening to at the time?
Oh, I mean, I've been listening to the Dead since high school, and
is that because of Dad?
Kind of, yes, kind of. The Dead was definitely more my dad, because he had American Beauty and I think Working Man's Dead on his computer at his shop. So American Beauty was like on all the time.
You don't have to tell me, my mom is an artist. Yeah. And she played the same album, and Uncle John's Band is one of her favorite songs, and it just hit.
Yeah. So that, Bruce Springsteen, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, right? I'm not a fan of Bon Jovi. He's good. He's fine, but it's not my cup of tea.
Sure.
Allman Brothers, Southern Rock.
So my mom was the hippie, right? She was into the Grateful Dead, and then my dad was like a good old country boy, like Hank Williams III, and then also like Southern Rock, like Leonard Skinner, Allman Brothers,
Marshall Tucker, the Outlaws, all that,
like all of that. So then, as you're starting to learn, and like you talk about this fucking cauldron, this soup of all this stuff that's going on. So you're going through. How long did school last?
I graduated in 2005 from high school, went to community college for 2 years, and drank my way through that. And then
drinking in college.
I mean, I started in college and it didn't go.
You didn't drink as a teenager?
No, I was I was like a depressed, introverted.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so then, did that kind of help you break out of your shell? Like that, what they call it, liquid courage, right? Or,
and like probably
into it, because it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Both, it's both. Probably in a reckless way, but I'm not. You could regret what you regret, but everything shapes who you are at the present moment. So
1,000%. It chisels you away. Those experiences is what makes you who you are today.
Exactly.
And that's why you don't repeat some of that same bullshit that you had in the past.
Exactly, because everything's a lesson, and they're all blessings. So going through college at Salisbury, all that was happening, and then I guess I graduated in winter 2009 into 2010, and my senior semester of 2009, I dropped acid. And
that was the first time you'd ever dropped out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in my apartment with my roommates.
Okay.
And
have they been experienced?
No, we all just like.
Oh my God, a fucking room full of noobs that have never done this before, and you're just shooting to the moon.
Yeah, and then like on my come down, I filled like 4 pages of scribbles, and I was just like, whoa.
Wait, hold on. Let's not get to the come down. Let's talk about the come up. So like that first, like that euphoric feeling, and then what's happening, and then was it like heavy visuals for you? And what did you guys do?
I wouldn't say it was heavy visuals, but it was enough that shit was just goofy, and we listened to music, and and I doodled, because that's kind of my anxious way of doing things. Like I'm just getting energy out,
Your comfort zone.
It's
like just putting that pen in your hand and then just letting
it
flow. The senior year of
it was my final semester, and that's when the light bulb went off. I was like, oh, I got to take this more seriously, and I have to surround myself with people who who just similar minded people. And it was just kind of like this I'm at the top of the mountain and I could see all kinds of shit. It was that, and that started, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna hang out with the people that I got this from. And I did, and I ended up and I've told this story so many times. I went to All Good. I got a ticket to All Good Music Festival in 2010. That was 2010.
Okay.
My buddy said that I could sell bootleg shirts, and I did. I sold all of them.
Did you screen print them yourself?
Yeah, in the screen printing shop that I helped build out of college, which was an internship where I learned more about the screen printing process and business and all that.
Can you explain that to some people that don't necessarily understand what's going on? Because like a lot of things are like digitally printed. For screen printing, it's essentially a bunch of
one layer at a time. Yeah, more or less. It's spot color. So like if you see this wallpaper would be, or posters, whatever. Every color you see is one screen and then layered one at a time on top of each other.
You squeegeeing it on top?
Yep.
And so how many shirts did you press?
175.
Jesus Christ.
I sold like 170. And
what was the design?
It was like a tree growing out of earth, and it said "Good vibes, good people, good music." And then I spelled "further" wrong on the back because they were the headliner. Yeah. I was a noob, and I've spelled things wrong since.
Listen, there's still motherfuckers who have decades of experience that don't know how to spell amphitheater.
Yeah. I wish they all agreed on one spelling.
That's very
trying to be fancy.
Yeah. Pinkies out.
Yeah.
So you're hitting a lot, or you were camping, I'm
Yep.
guessing?
Yep.
So then you just have a backpack full of shirts and you're fucking
hustling. Me and my buddy, like $15 or something like that. One guy offered me $15 worth of Bitcoin. I was like, "What the fuck's Bitcoin?"
Oh my God, did you take it?
No, I didn't know what it was.
No, and now it's like a fucking
$1,000 it'd be
Bitcoin.
It would like 10 million. Yeah, it'd be everything would have changed, but no, I didn't know.
Nobody knows what the fuck digital cryptocurrency is.
I do now, but like
in 2010, nobody knew
what it was just a catchphrase, buy Bitcoin or whatever. But whatever, I did it again.
How did that experience start changing things, right? Like, so you sold these shirts. Obviously, you sell 170 of these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
People thought the design was dope. What were people saying because like we all see those lock kits, right?
Yeah.
To push it. So like, how was the response? What were people saying? Because like some people are fucking brutal, right? And they're like, oh, that looks like. Have you seen the crappy fan art? It's a website where people literally shit on.
Oh, like farts.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen that. People are mean, but they're not doing it, so fuck them.
Yeah. But that's where you have to level up, right? You have to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
So like with you had obviously been going to art school, so you were working on your
craft.
Yeah. And so then when you got there, it was obviously well received. If you sell a fucking 170 of anything, so that means
yeah, I did well. Most of the people were nice. But like, hell yeah, or I don't have any money, or nobody was just like, oh, that's like they're not hiding behind a screen talking shit.
No keyboard.
Yeah, so they're not doing that. And even if there was, you got to learn how to take criticism, and most of that's not criticism. You got to learn the difference between constructive criticism and a hater. That's an important part about just doing all this. So I got through it and had a really good time, and that's kind of what showed me, oh, you know what, I could make a living doing this. So that turned into a hobby, doing.
So were you just doing shirts then at that time?
Shirts, and then I was doing like mixtapes for the local hip hop guys. I was doing party flyers. I was doing.
So smaller media, you're just getting it, testing some of this stuff out.
Just doing art because I had to do it. That's the thing. I have to do it. It's my creative expression.
What was your first show poster?
My first real show poster was Pigeons Playing Ping Pong opening for the Pimps of Joy Time at the 8x10.
That's awesome.
What
year was that?
2011.
Okay, so not even a year fucking later.
Not even a year later.
You got jumped into it. How did you meet the guys from PPP or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I got to meet them.
How did that kind of go? Because a lot of people don't understand. For like artists, they're like, oh, do you just like blast an email? Like now we live in this digital world where everyone's like dropping DMs or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, how did that process look 13 years ago?
Yeah, I guess I did that and everybody liked it. So in the Baltimore music scene, it's a very small scene. So whoever sees that, Aaron Kovelman hit me up, who now works for All Good. He used to be the LD for a whole bunch of world touring EDM artists. He's just a very talented individual, but he had a few bands that he was playing in. He got me to do a few, and some of those were opening for bigger bands. And then there was a band called the Deaf Scene, who is also a great prog band, who opened for Papadozio. They opened for the Works, and then I got to do a Papadozio poster. I got to do.
So then those guys and that management team and merch is saying, "Damn, this is sick. Let me see."
And then so then
was it always One Drop Design?
It was Owen Murphy art.
It was Owen Murphy art. When did you transcend into One Drop?
In like 2014 or 15, my buddy pursued me. He was like, "Yo, you should make this a real thing. I'll help you. Let's do this." And we started off as a partnership, setting out to do something different than what I am now.
Was he an artist as well, though?
No, he was like more manager.
Okay.
Trying just
so
keeping
all the nitty gritty detail bullshit, responding to emails, administrative shit,
helping with that out.
And you're just fucking
working. And I was doing that, and then I was just working party. I was working a full-time job too. At an office screen printing shop.
Okay. So you were still kind of in that vertical, but it wasn't all for you. You were just. And did that help you, like learning screen printing?
Learn business.
Yeah.
And learn merch and learn how to,
the hustle, right? Like,
yeah.
There's so much that goes into it.
Yeah. And then from there, my wife's a nurse. I got
met. Did you meet her?
I met her at Salisbury in 2010. And then
nursing school at the time?
She was going into nursing school.
Okay.
And then we actually got together the night of my first poster. So that night kind of was a portal for the rest of my life.
So talking about big life fucking.
Yeah. It was one of those like the universe provided.
Energy attracts, and it just fucking blew up for you.
Yeah, it was nuts.
And I'm sure at the time you don't even realize, but now looking back 13 years later, you like look at that major moment in your life.
Like, it's just life's a chain of decisions that you make, and you just got to make the right ones.
People always like, oh, heaven and hell, and like for me, when I think about like what hell is, it's like going back to those decisions and seeing all like the different ways that you could have fucking done something. But I feel like that's also where like anxiety comes from, because you're like, well, what if? And it's like, for me, I'm like, and I've heard you already say this, it's every failure is a learning opportunity, right? And like adapt and grow, pick up your shit, because like we all don't have perfect lives, right? Like we have trauma, we have bullshit, we have mental health, we have all these things that play into us, but that builds who we are. Right? And when you're cognizant of what's going on, you can actually learn from those weaknesses or insecurities and kind of
self-awareness and all that. And we're human and we're not perfect, and I'm far from it. I've fucked up a lot. But, I think I don't remember who the first person I heard say this was, like becoming the ultimate version of yourself, or pursuing that version of yourself is the best thing you can do for yourself and other people. Like the only thing Ram Dass said is like, the only thing I could do for you is to work on myself. The only thing you could do for me is to work on yourself. And that's, Ram Dass is a teacher of mine. I read Be Here Now and just went down this rabbit hole that I haven't gotten out of yet. I was listening to Be Love Now on the flight here, so like, I think all that stuff's important. I grew up going to like Catholic school and church and stuff. I'm not a Catholic or anything, but it gave me this foundation to seek something more, like seek the truth or whatever.
Like for me, like I'm not religious. I didn't grow up in a religious family. I always joke that I ask too many questions, right? But
You're supposed to.
but that's
Yeah.
exactly it, right? And then going off of like Ram Dass, I always tell people, like, my football coaches used to say, hey, it doesn't matter how great you are, but how great you make the people around you.
Yeah.
And then control on what you can control, which is yourself.
Yes.
I can't control how somebody responds. You can't control how somebody like looks at your art and responds.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can hear some of those things or those criticisms and intrinsically look at yourself and go, hey, is there some truth to this? And
Yeah.
like, how do I start to adapt and evolve and grow?
It's about how you react to something. The worst thing could happen to you. It's how you react to that. You know, that's
so then as you're starting to level up and like get these show posters, and now you're getting out and you're doing it for some of these like bigger bands, how did the, because I don't think people even understand like what goes into a artist and like how those quote unquote contracts work or what they're doing. For me, just so that I can give what my general understanding is what I think happens is a band or the management or merch or whoever it is contacts an artist. They're saying, hey, we want a poster for this date or this venue. Then they're either paying you like a set fee for that poster, and then you're limited to the amount of like artist prints that you're able to print, and that's how you really make your money. Is that kind of how it is, and what does that look like so that people can better understand that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely poster artists specifically make that they pay the bills off their APs.
Okay.
You know, we do sometimes get art fees. It just depends on how the deal's structured.
Okay.
You know, for me, if I know I could sell a lot of APs, then I might not take the artist fee and I might double up on my APs.
So then they give you a number or how many that you're allowed to sell, or how does that work?
Sometimes it's just like I've had a couple where they're just like, yeah, you can print as many as you want, just don't print more than we have. And I was like, that's a weird. I'm not going to take advantage of that, but like that's a wild thing to say. But
and
then
are they limited as artists? Because what I've always heard is that they can only sell 10% of the venue's capacity for posters. So like say it's
some deals.
That is some deals.
Yeah,
so
some deals
it's
like
cut
that.
as dry like that. Like, hey, it's 1,000-person venue. You can sell 100 posters because that's 10% of whatever it is. Because I mean, it goes back to supply and demand, right? You don't want to overflood it. But then I've also seen some of this shit. Like, so I went and we talked about this. I went, not you and I, but to the cyber world. I went to the Sphere for my birthday, right?
Looked epic.
And it was fucking phenomenal. But being the poster junkie, the first place I went in the morning was that poster line. And for me, it was so insane to see, like, and I love the Dead. They're my favorite band. They will always be my number one.
Yeah.
But what they've done, and a lot of people like bitch about what they've done with merch and like selling out and all that stuff. But like they have such these huge runs of prints, shirts, all this shit. That for me, I feel like it takes away from the artist, because now I don't know if there's limitations on when you can drop your APs or what that looks like. But say if somebody comes and drops thousands of a poster and now you have 100 or a couple hundred to be able to sell to get paid, then I feel like they're taking away that ability for you to make money. Not that I want you to shit on anybody, but like, does that reign true?
I mean, this year was a little weird, but
and that was because of the Sphere.
Yeah, it was like they're doing, what was it, 30 shows at one venue, and it's a huge venue. And at the end of the day, I am a production artist. When I'm doing posters, it is merch. It's just merch. Like the bands are selling merch, they're a business, they have a big ass team. You know, Bobby might be the face and John Mayer might be the face, but like there are so many, there's so many other things. So it's like a lot of jobs are being created and all that. You know, at the end of the day, I've done pretty good already with what I have, what I was given for my allotment. I'm still selling them. I have a lot of them because I did the residency.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask, is because they had like, so this is the insanity of the Sphere and Dead & Co.
Yeah.
They had individual day posters. They
Yeah.
had individual VIP posters. They had
Yeah.
individual weekend run posters.
And the VIP posters.
Then they had VIP posters.
Yeah.
Then they had the entire run poster. And,
Yeah.
and it's just like, it's like the Disneyfication of the jam band scene.
It's like baseball cards.
1,000%. But like we grew up, and when we grew up, baseball cards, they put out so many of them that it lost its value, right?
Yeah.
And so then for me, it's like, I understand that they're trying to do this and it's dead forever, and I totally get that. But what I want us as fans to remember is, for the artists like you guys, like we should make sure that we're selling out your APs before we're worried about jumping on to Dead and Sphere. So like, when you drop, because I used to see people say, oh, hey, I dropped this poster, in the next week or two, I'll drop my APs.
Yeah.
But if you wait too long, then sometimes like that demand gets driven down.
Yeah.
Where then you're not selling as much on your AP. So like I was literally seeing folks at the Sphere, my birthday date, the AP dropped literally the next day.
Yeah, you kind of had to do that. Which is what I did with, I kind of did that with my show poster on the Cowboy. Yep. I was in Oregon on a vacation.
Which was a second of the Phoenix poster.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I remember you made an Instagram post, because you're great. If you don't follow One Drop Designs, I mean, we'll talk about you having to make content, but you had posted that like, oh, hey, I was asked by a band, because first off, you're an asshole and you never tell us who it is. And you should. But I was asked by a band to make a second variant or a second poster of similar to the first one.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that it's the cowboy riding through the valley, right? I was like, that's fucking sick. Then for them, like, how does that team or that man, and I know it's not Bobby or John that's asking you, like, what are the directions that they give you? Or like, do they make suggestions? Are they like telling you, hey, here's kind of what we want? Or how does that work?
They're the only band with like that specific of direction. I mean, at the end of the day, they kind of let me run with it, but like on this one, it was like, hey, I love that Phoenix poster. Can you like play off of that for this? And then at the very beginning, it was like, hey, send a couple sketches. This is an idea I had, and this is like a big shot merch guy, which is who we always deal with. It's like, yeah, I want to play something off of like lizards. I was like, okay, like he's like, yeah, just desert lizards, and it had nothing to do with Fear and Loathing at the time. But I was like, well, yeah, Fear and Loathing. That had nothing. It had nothing to do with that at the time. So I was like, well, how can I? Well, there's lizards in the desert, and then there's the idea of lot lizards, and then like, what are the different like things that relate to each other with that, and how like that was like a brainstorm session. So then I was just thinking, okay, well, I know there's going to be a bunch of Fear and Loathing stuff, but how can I make it mine? So then I watched it and came to that,
And so because this Fear and Loathing, the lizard that you're talking about is the guy that's at the slot machine, right? But that was for the run.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is crazy, because originally it was supposed to be a weekend poster, and he liked it so much that he was like, I want this to be the whole run. And it ends up being like next to two of my favorite artists, who are AJ Mastay and Emic, who are, I'm still coming up, looking up to these guys. They're 10, 15, 20 years older than me. And now I'm next to both of them on the wall. It's like, yeah, that's crazy.
Which just shows how great of an artist that you are, right? And like the humility that you have, and like in your process of doing this. And so what I wanted to talk about was, because I had heard on another podcast, I don't remember who it was. It was Posters in Pocket. What was the name of that one?
Posters in Every Direction.
Yeah, Posters in Every Direction. Go listen to it. They have an interview with him. Mostly they talk about Dave Matthews. But in that podcast, you actually talked about watching Fear and Loathing. And then for me, when I went and saw that poster on the wall, I saw that inspiration. Right?
Yeah.
And then we were chatting, and you're like, what I love in posters is those Easter eggs, right? So some of those things that people may not see, but you're putting in there. And so like you had told me like what the company name that you put on the slot machine?
Yeah, the company name's DeVille, which just means devil. And if you look, it's a $20 slot machine, and it's the friend of the devil. Really, I grew up around casinos in South Jersey. My dad's been working in Atlantic City for 41 years.
Jesus.
So yeah, so like I see the
You know
underbelly.
the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like casinos, so it's kind of that, and I tied that in with friend of the devil, obvious reference. And there's a few other on
Shay
there.
won't get it because he's not a fucking deadhead. That's why he's not here.
What a weirdo. Yeah.
But
So
were there any other Easter eggs that you put in that specific poster?
yeah, there's an orange sunshine logo on the soda dropping on the tongue of the slot machine, and if you know, you know.
Yeah.
I think like last year's Phoenix poster, I put peyote buttons on the corners,
Yeah.
disjointed. Nobody's really noticed that at all. But now, hey, go look.
But that's why I wanted to talk about it, because like for me, a lot of us, like, we live in a digital world, right? So like before a show, we're like, oh, they just dropped this poster, look at this, and it's only this big, right? So you can't really see. So then once you get in and like see that poster and see the intricate details, we're just seeing it with our naked eye. But for you as an artist, you're spending all this time. So like when they ask for a couple sketches, how long does that take for you to do? Are you sending them like multiples, and then are they saying, hey, run with this one, and then you're spending time building out the poster? Or
that's exactly how it goes.
So how long are you spending on those sketches?
Per sketch, it depends on a few things. It might be a real quick one where I'm like, hey, here's this idea, just trust me. Trust me, bro. And that's worked.
You have a general idea enough where like, here's the direction I want to head, but you obviously don't want to put in, because like you have so much detail in your work that you don't want to put so much into it before it's being like approved or whatever.
Yeah, because sometimes a lot of those details change on the fly, like in the process. Like I might, the juxtaposition of something might be off, or like I might not like how this looks, so I might change up the way the sky looks, or like instead of regular space, I might swirl it out, or like just, or like little Easter eggs, I might not throw those in. That comes later because I get a spark of inspiration for like, oh, that'd be cool. Because I'm only really realistically, I'm spending maybe 20 minutes to a half hour doing a rough sketch at most.
Sketches digital? Or are you doing ink?
Both?
How does that kind of work?
Mostly digital, but occasionally, like, I go hiking a lot, take my dog for a walk, go out in nature, or I'll sit on the couch and just zone out in the space. And like, my like sketchbooks here that I was showing you earlier, like you saw where some things comes from and all that. So
well, and that's what was so dope is like you talked about it being like a meditation, right?
Yeah,
and that ability, because like for us, when you're getting into working, when you're doing something, like you're spending time and like, okay, yes, I'm like drawing, but you still have all your thoughts that are running through your head. And so like, how is that playing into your like art style, right? And like obviously as you continue to evolve as a person, your art is evolving.
The big part of that is like, that part comes down to when I'm doing coloring, texturing, when you look at my stuff and see all the hatches, that mostly in the color part, but like if there's repetitive movement and I'm doing that, that's like a Zen meditation, where like an active meditation where it's over and over and over again. And there's artists like Dave Clock, for example, and my friend Luke Martin, or even Welker, or like Emick. There's like guys who have really tight hatching and a really tight disciplined line, and that comes from like the Dürer, or like there's like those old German woodblock printers who have just insane hatch work or whatever, and wherever you want to go with from that branch and lineage of illustration, whatever. I love that, and I've definitely influenced by that. But then when I go into colors and stuff, I don't really think like that. I want to be more expressive about it and be loose. And I don't care if I'm sloppy because whatever. Like, yeah, you could look at it and figure that out. But realistically, like you're looking at things also from 5 feet away on the wall and it comes together. And I figured that out by looking at Monet
Okay.
and some of those impressionists and expressionists, whether it's Monet, Van Gogh, some of those dudes.
So you are using some of these traditional painters and artists as your inspiration.
Absolutely.
And so were you getting that foundation from school and like art history and then kind of seeing styles that like vibed with you? And
Yeah.
who would you say are some of those, like not just poster artists, right? But some of these actual artists other than Monet and Van Gogh that started to influence
Fine artists.
Fine artists, yes. The fine artists.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Monet. You know, seeing his stuff in person was breathtaking. I love Picasso. I love Van Gogh.
So then how did you transcend into, because like a lot of this stuff is like you like, I don't want to like paint you in a corner, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff has become like psychedelic, right?
Yeah.
And your art form kind of transcend. And it's not that it's so psychedelic that we can't figure it out. You can see like the general outline of what you're going for, but with those fine details and that colorization, you really bring it into a different time and space, right?
Yeah, well, I like to give, you know, I guess would be reverence to the guys who created this genre of art, which, you know, comes really, the godfathers are from the Art Nouveau, where you have Alphonse Mucha and Grissot and, you know, Toulouse-Lautrec and those guys, but that's who influenced heavily the San Francisco era, which was, you know, Rick Griffin, who's my favorite, or Wes Wilson, who also is, you know, one of the greatest, who's so iconic. Mouse is really the GOAT because he's like 85 years old, post stroke, still putting shit out. You know, he's a machine, dude.
I went to Trips in San Francisco. I was literally just in San Francisco for work, and then I found out that Trips was happening in downtown San Francisco.
I'll be there.
I was an hour and a half away, and I told my wife, I was like, "Hey, babe, I'm sorry, I'm leaving at 1:00 in the morning. I'm gonna go wait in line."
Yeah.
And fucking Stanley, I got my Chuck Berry, which is what I was there for.
Yeah.
In his backyard.
Maybe that's where I saw you.
But then Stanley came out, and I was like, Jesus Christ! And it wasn't even a year past his stroke.
Dude, he's a machine.
It's insane.
Like, it is crazy. Like insane. Big time goals. You know, I hope I'm 85 and just cranking it out like him. But even like, you know, all those guys, you know, Rick Griffin really, you know, he really resonated with me because he started with Surfer magazine.
I was gonna say surf style.
Yeah, and I grew up surfing. You know, that was surfing and skating. I learned my life philosophy from surfing. You know, where you got to paddle out through the waves and get through them shit. You know, and then you catch a wave and you ride that wave for as long as you can.
But also the zenness around you, right? Like for us in Hawaii, we would spend more time sitting before we would surf to watch waves, to watch breaks, to see how this works.
Understanding what's going on today.
Yes.
And right now.
And now I feel like now getting to meet you and seeing that, like you're also doing that in life, right?
Yeah.
So like you're sitting back and you're being aware and you're watching these happen. So it's not just in your personal life, but in like the art scene. So what I wanted to kind of talk about is like, there's been so many dynamic changes, and obviously like posters have blown out and they're more popular now than they have ever been, right? Because like back in the 60s, it was once in a while that you're putting out shows.
And not only that, but they were promo.
Yes.
And it
wasn't for the people. It was just
it's just like and get people to leave. like they were giving out free posters for the next show or whatever. Like, hey, first 150 people or whatever, get the fuck out. And that was brilliant. And you know, you had those guys early on. I just met this dude, Jacaber Castor, who's like this fucking wizard, awesome, cool collector who is also a really sick artist. He grew up in Berkeley in the 60s collecting those as a teenager, doing that stuff. And it was just a promo art. And the whole thing was like, oh, if you can't read it, it's not for you. And like there's the whole lore behind it, and I love that. And it was almost art for art's sake in a sense, and they weren't selling for $150,000 or whatever, which is wild.
That's what happens now.
And now it's become
when
merch.
we get that 2010 lot shirt from Owen Murphy that
Yeah.
shows up, one of the 170 that got out there.
Good luck finding
20
one.
years, but that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's insane. But what I wanted to talk about was like, so with the popularity of rise, I mean, there are so many bands, because before it was just like a certain sector of bands that was having some of these things, or promo posters and what it is. And now like everyone and their mother is printing out these posters. But what we had was, I just live a couple miles from Red Rocks, right?
Yeah.
And so it was maybe a month ago, Derek Trucks and Susan Tedeschi were here, and they came out and they dropped this print, and it I don't want to say it's similar, but it is a valley of red rocks that somebody is walking through, and it was very clearly AI.
Yeah, it was very clearly AI. And, you know, with those, the devil's in the details. You know, when you look at it and you see a face going and like hands that don't make sense, and, you know,
or like line work. You were talking about line work. And I will give them props, because Derek and Susan came out that night.
Yeah.
They said, hey, we found, and the way that I found out about it is there's an Instagram account called the AI Cop.
Yeah.
and so they're literally like
no relation
scanning these images to like find these things, and they came out, they ate crow. They're like, hey, we hired this, it is AI, and they donated all the money and all the sales for the poster to a nonprofit, which was amazing and dope. And they ate their shit and dealt with it. But for us as fans and as people that are spending our money on these things, to understand, just like we wouldn't want to like support a band that's not like Milli Vanilli, right? That's like not performing their own art and doing their own.
I mean, that's a lot. There's a lot of pop artists doing that today.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the what was it? Dave Grohl called it his band the Errors Tour, because he actually sings and plays his instrument.
That's funny.
Ripping on Taylor Swift, which, I mean, with 2 daughters, I fucking do everything I can to influence them with everything else. But like, that's going to be part of it, right? And so what I want to do is make sure that we're having conversations, kind of shedding the light on some of the shit, because yes, it's going to be part of our reality. But what I also want to understand is like, make sure that we're supporting those artists that are actually putting in that time and understanding what goes into it. Like, you and I were chatting, and you were saying like, hey, as I'm evolving as a person, my art form is evolving, right? Yeah. Because everything that you're going through, those experiences, and just like we talk about, like, an artist that goes through a breakup or a big life event, you can see some of that transcend into the way that they're playing their instruments or the lyrics that they're writing. So some of that stuff is happening with you as well. Right?
Yeah, and that's crazy, because that's how a robot learns. It's like it's an algorithm with them, and for me, it's some kind of spiritual algorithm in the unseen in this journey. Yeah.
Well, and so that's one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, is because, like, for me, I was like, oh, it's One Drop Design, it's Owen Murphy, like, your stuff is like so psychedelic. I totally thought that I was going to meet you and that you would be talking about, oh yeah, you know, I get spun out, and then I'm doing art. That is not the case, right?
Yeah, no, I'm sober. Like, when I work, I mean, I'm not like totally sober as a person. You know, I smoke weed sometimes, and, you know, occasionally I'll delve into psychedelics, like if I'm just trying to clear the clock and do a really heavy meditation or whatever. You know, sit with my bullshit for 12 hours. But no, I don't drink anymore.
Well, and that's what's crazy is like, so for me, I thought like, oh man, so with the form and what you've been doing and the leveling up of all your different pieces and how that looks, I thought for sure that it was going to be substance driven.
Yeah, no, not at all.
That it wasn't at all. That like blew my mind, and I fucking love to hear it, because then it gives other people the inspiration to know that you don't have to be super fucked up to do these things. And obviously you have those experiences, which helps you kind of pull from that bucket.
Yeah.
You don't have to drink from it all the time to create your success, right?
Those things help me sit with my discomfort.
Yeah.
You know, something that's bugging me, for all my, you know, traumas or whatever, you know, all the inner dialogue could be dark at times, and it could get me through that. And listening to my teachers, like I said, just remember what Ram Dass said, or Krishnamurti, or even Marcus Aurelius or any of these guys, remembering those things. But yeah, it's being able to sit with myself, because that's what I'm doing as an artist. I'm not distracted by this, that, and the other thing while I'm drawing. Like, I have to sit down and focus for a chunk of time over like a week. Like, I think now most of my prints take about 50 hours minimum to do. So I have to sit.
How does that compare to like when you were first getting into posters full time in 2014? How long were you taking to do your artwork then?
I think probably less time, but also I was learning the process. So that was taking me a little bit more time, and I learned how to streamline that process in some ways, and learned how to capture and express myself of how I wanted to draw a hand or a shadow or whatever. There's a lot of playing and guessing and checking.
So then what is the longest that you've spent making one piece?
Over 100 hours.
Jesus
I
Christ.
did this past Pretty Lights Red Rocks one, and
that VIP, that
yeah,
Pretty Lights print?
yeah,
100 hours on that?
it was over 100 hours. And what came out of it was, for one, they gave me a really nice direction. Like, it was a loose direction, and it was also an evolution of the previous tour, which previously was 75 hours. What I did, which a piece that I did was 75 hours, which at that time. So now this one's over 100 hours.
So here comes Owen. I want to challenge myself.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, the whole thing is connecting with your higher self. And that's kind of how I illustrated it. You see the faces splitting open and going into your, and in here,
thought process,
and going in here, and just, it's the thought process. And again,
but then you're putting that on paper. It's like we talked about, like, both of us love musicians who are lyricists, right? And you tell a story that you can connect with. And for me, like, I love that because I can do it with your art, right? And I can see that splitting of these personalities or of these emotions, and figuring out how to connect with some of this stuff, and then to get to chat with you and see, like, that's literally what you're doing, right? And then it gives people. So now for me, instead of just like loving the art and now seeing some of the reasoning behind that shit, it's so cool and eye-opening. Because before, I mean, I'm sure there's fucking hundreds of people that are just like, oh, that's a dope poster, right? But they don't really like take the time to look at what put into it and the evolution of you.
Well, regardless, there's, with any art, they could look at it, and no matter how deep, they're not going to get the same thing out of it that I did. They're going to project their own series of experiences on it. That's, so if I can connect with somebody through that, that's fucking awesome, because
you're giving them that chain link to connect their own experiences too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Your chain goes one way, but somebody else can take this or interpret this and do all these things different ways. And it's the same thing with like lyrics. And like, that's why I told you, like, I love The Dead is my thing, right? And so like some of these stories and these folklore, it's beautiful, and talking about some of this. And so that's why I love Billy Strings, because not only is it fast and hard bluegrass, but what he's singing about, how he's singing about things, where he's coming from. I don't have to come from the same thing, but now I can attach some of my own bullshit and trauma and live through that.
Correct. Yeah, he's a really introspective and self-aware person, and I love that he's on the path of doing that, and you could hear it in his lyrics. And when I do something for him, that's usually what I'm trying to connect to.
So that's what you use as the inspiration?
Yeah.
But that's not for every band, right?
It's not for every band. Some bands, like, for Pretty Lights, for example, that was a totally different approach of creating the image. If I'm doing, sometimes I just want to draw something I think's cool. Sometimes it's thematic to, like, oh, it's a Thanksgiving show, so let me do something like that. Or if it's, if it's at the beach, let me do something that's beach related, because that's kind of my bread and butter.
So
it's
what has been one of your more challenging posters for you in that process? And what is one of those ones that you really truly love now that you can like step back and look at it? And you don't have to put it to just one, but right, like for us, there's so oftentimes we have these artists and we're like, oh, this is the poster that is the best of theirs. But you talk to that artist and they're like, actually, this is the one that I love.
Yeah, there's definitely ones.
I didn't give him this question beforehand, so
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good question. I don't like doing diptychs because I think it waters down concepts.
okay.
I prefer to put everything into one concept, so it's hard. It's a whole exercise to split one concept between two posters and make it interesting.
Yeah, I can see
Um,
that. Because you're just kind of widening things out rather than
yeah, definitely.
Do you feel like on those with like the larger size, you have more to do with it? Because most
No,
posters are all the same size, right?
yeah, I don't see it as a bigger canvas. Even though it is, it's just like it's now two things, and they want two different. It's when they ask, it's like they want two different posters. Like, okay, how do I do? Like I said, how do I
That
split
play
this?
into each other? Right?
Yeah, like how do I do that now? It's a whole nother exercise. Which now it was a pain in the ass doing the Billy Strings Halloween poster, or not Halloween. He's in Baltimore this Halloween, but he was in Baltimore last December, where I did the diptych for Love and Regret. So I was like, okay, well that's
Going
there.
after the lyrics.
Yeah, there's something cool to work with. That it's two like the song. Yeah, it starts with the song's two different words. So how can I do one song that can capture love and regret, and then how can I capture another poster that kind of just mirrors that and have that like its own, make it like a duality. Yeah,
Which I can see can be difficult, right?
it's yeah, that's a hard process.
But is there a print or poster that you've done that really resonates that you're like, man, even if it's like going through that thought process, right? And like having through like that mental journey of like, oh fuck, I remember that I was going through this and this is when I was working on this piece, and you put those emotions into it. Is there anything like that that kind of stands out to you at
I
all?
think my Foo Fighters poster was like that when I had to turn that around in a week.
Jesus.
Yeah, I got an email. I was on my way back from Richmond from picking up some posters I had to deliver, and I got an email on the way home. I was like, "Oh fuck!" So I
So
went.
how does that work? They just because they obviously know, does like somebody drop out and now they're like, oh, we
Maybe
need
I
to.
think it's someone might drop out, or someone's maybe the show got announced late or something. There's a lot of variables, but for that one, I was like, oh shit, like I'm driving. I have to leave Richmond, deliver these down to Fenwick, Delaware. It was for Tedeschi Trucks actually, and but like on the entire way to Delaware and back to Baltimore, I had the Foo Fighters on repeat, like, and like kind of just like getting in there, thinking about it, and like, oh, then so now okay, here's this song. This is this is how I project my thing onto this song. So how am I going to capture this? And so that was a good one.
Give you a lot of direction for that one?
No, they just said do whatever. They just don't want like naked women or murder or cars or something, whatever it was.
See, like here's our 3 don'ts, and then everything
Yeah,
else you can just get after it and do it.
yeah, pretty
How
much.
normally giving you guys for like a turnaround?
Normally I have a couple months.
You do have a couple months.
Yeah,
so you have stuff like planned out where so that you can block out your time. Because if you're doing fucking 100 hours on one piece, right? Like, so then are you layering multiple posters and art at the same time? So where you're like, hey, I'm going to start on this project because I know sometimes that I need to do it. Or do you like focus on, hey, this is the one that I'm going to get done and finish before I move on to the next?
Sometimes I might come to like a spot where I'm like, I got to sleep on this, and then I might start or work on another one.
Yeah.
Just like I might start the line work on another one and then go to sleep, and then the next morning be like, okay, I know where I need to go with this one. And
kind of
then
like a musician who starts writing a song,
yeah,
break it up. Like, hey, I'm just going to start laying the track on this other one.
yeah,
Break up your process. And that was the other thing I wanted to talk about is like the pressure on you. Like, I'm sure you put it on yourself, but like to level up and continue to evolve and adapt your style and like just the sheer beauty in these prints that you're putting out. Because like if we did like a timeline of from when you started a decade ago to like where you're at now, and then I'd love to look at it and not put pressure on you, but in 10 years to see like, hey, how does that evolve and change, and what does that thing look like, right?
Yeah. That I don't know. I know right now my intention is to start painting more. So just like mess with a new medium. So there's that.
So is that just like a different challenge to you then? Or like when you're doing these posters, like, because obviously it's your brand, it's your style, but they're different, or they're so much more detailed, or it's like the storytelling in this, although people may not get it, you as an artist get what you're putting onto that paper, right?
Yeah.
And so like for me, I like so many people are like, oh, when's this musician gonna come out with their next album? Like, and then it's fine. So like Billy Strings, right? He's about to drop his new album right before renewal, and he's slowly dropping some of these singles, and people are like, oh, this is fucking trash, right? And it's like
cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks,
like,
Peanut Gallery, from your fucking couch.
But that's not for like you. Do you deal with the same bullshit from people from like a poster perspective? Where people are like, oh, and I don't see how they fucking could. But like, obviously, there's like haters and bullshit.
Of course, there's always haters, but they're jealous or miserable or projecting. They have their own bullshit. It's none of my business. I can't take it super seriously.
Put on your bullshit deflectors and just
and that comes with just knowing the difference between a hater and like sometimes like you'll see I might see something where I'm like, oh, you know what, that's actually a good piece of advice right there. Like I need to keep that in mind, but that's like few
deep in the hate.
I might see that. Yeah, I might see that, and it's like, oh, cool. Okay, I gotta be mindful of that. I appreciate that. But like, if someone just like,
what's an example of something like that you've read that you're like, oh fuck, that actually kind of does make sense. How can I challenge myself to do this a little different?
One was for my, and I think it might have to do with the technology I use, but some of the colors can be washed out during the printing process, and like, my screen, what I see on my screen might not look the same on your screen. So like a blue might be more faded or whatever. So I have to be more mindful of that. I haven't really gotten much where it's just like, I haven't really gotten like crazy criticism where it's like, I don't know, like, oh, that hand's weird or whatever. Cause no, I don't give a shit about that. But if it's something that could make my image pop a little bit more, like I'll look for that kind of thing.
So then you're constantly evolving and educating yourself? Are you looking at other art for inspiration, or where are you getting your inspiration now?
Everywhere. I look at all my artists and friends. I'm inspired by a lot of them.
Have you done any collaborations?
Yeah, I've done a few. I do a lot with Tom Shaw, and that's cool because he's very minimalist and I'm very detailed. So when we put our stuff together, it's like it's a whole nother artist, when you're doing that. Collabed with the Nate Diaz, Bourbon Sunday a while ago. That was pretty cool.
Is there anybody that you would want to collaborate with in the future?
Sure. I mean, I'm about to collab with Luke Martin on something. We've been talking about it. He's a Baltimore guy.
Teasing the internet about it too.
Yeah.
Like, you motherfucker, and everyone's like, wait, what? Are you guys bullshitting, or what's gonna happen?
No, we're not. We're not bullshitting. He's early, like, since he's moved back to Baltimore, we're like, yeah, we should get together and just kick it and make some art. And we've been painting, and
Just hanging together.
Just hanging, and yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. And then do you feel like it's easier to connect with another artist because they know all the monotony and bullshit that you're going through?
Yeah, and sometimes it is more than often it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then what are you doing? Because you already said that you're taking your dog and you're going for hikes and walks to to get out into nature and to ground yourself. What are some of the other things that you're doing to like keep yourself stable, right? Because like in this unstable world, we all have to have like our outlets and our bullshit. And for me, like I can only imagine putting so much into your work, and this is your livelihood, right?
Yeah.
So then I feel like for myself, like I always tell people, I'm the hardest on myself than anyone is ever going to be to me.
We all are.
So then it's like, well, not all of us are.
Well,
the ones that really push themselves, I feel like they do. But then I also feel like for us to have that mental health break or to like fill that bucket, what are some of those things that you're doing that just brings you joy?
I mean, I go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, so I like blowing out the gaskets there.
Okay. Just getting all your shit out.
Trying to do that, yeah. I'll go to shows, go see some live music, experience I love comedy. I'll go to comedy shows at Magoobies is the local club, so I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, going to see other art, going to museums is great. Traveling, like I'm here, I'm gonna go to the mountains and just hang out, unplug, go to places I haven't seen before. You know,
that's why I feel like it's so hard because a lot of the times people that don't have things to fill their time or to fill their mind, they end up using substances and overusing substances, right?
Yeah.
And that's like their escape, and that's the only way that they can like get away.
Well, for a little bit that was an issue, you know, like when I was coming up and locally in Baltimore, it was like I'm doing these things and I was like, you know, I was drinking all the time, I was using cocaine, I was like not being good and all the shit. And then I had a mental breakdown. And my wife, and she's a nurse. So she was like, "Hey, I'm travel nursing and you're going to come with me." And I was like,
so she just cut it, got you out of your fucking
and then like I sat alone basically with my dogs for a year.
And your thoughts.
And my thoughts and my art. And like we went to Richmond, we went to Raleigh, we went to Los Angeles.
How did your art start to transcend? Because we talked about like big life moments, right?
Yeah.
That's obviously a big life moment. How did your art start to transcend during that time?
You could see the difference because that's all I was doing.
Okay.
So because that was all I was doing, it was just practice.
That's awesome.
And I wasn't partying. I wasn't, you know, I only had myself and my dogs and my wife to do that. You know, once we got to Los Angeles, I didn't really like LA, but I would go down to San Diego to see my cousins. Yeah, I would go down to San Diego and see my cousins and go surf. And then we moved out to Ventura.
Nice.
And that was like, okay, ever since then, I'm like, how do I like copy this routine? Because I would wake up, drink orange juice from my orange tree that I was in the house we were renting, drink my coffee, listen to mariachi a mile down to the beach, surf for 2 hours, come home and just draw all day. And that was my routine for 2 or 3 months. So it's like, and then like every kind of like transitional moment like that, where you get this like crazy glimmer of like inspiration or whatever of like, oh, things can be really, really good if this is how you do it. You set your mind to it, you set your intentions to it. And that was like a real aha moment where I was like, okay, you know what? Like, this is me. This is how I'm paying the bills. This is what I'm going to do. If I'm fucking up and partying all the time and doing that shit, I'm not going to have the energy or I'll just be at this lower vibration, not being able to actually do what I think or do what my passion is and have this purpose of being an artist and, you know, all that weird shit.
help write the following chapters.
Yeah, it's like the yoga. I don't remember who told me. It's the yoga of life. I have a friend who calls it his karma yoga, where it's like everything you do is for the purpose of something more, which could be, it's just working on yourself. That's what it is.
So then for you, like, because we're all fucking projects, right? And
yeah.
Every day is an evolution.
Yeah.
What are some of those things that you want to be working to now? Are there certain bands that you want to create art for? Is there venues that you want to be at or visit or things to do? Or what are some of your aspirations?
A venue. I'd like to go to the Gorge for something.
It's amazing, except for the fucking mile walk up over that.
Yeah, I'm in pretty good shape. But bands, I've done stuff for my favorite bands. I wouldn't mind doing one for Fish because I admire Trey as a person a lot. He's been kind of like a beam of light.
And he's somebody that's transcended through a lot of different chapters.
Yeah, well, he's exactly, and he's one I look at his story and I'm like, oh, that's dope. And then Billy is another one. A few one artist specifically, David Welker. Nice. He's been sober for a long time, and I look at his art, and people definitely see my influence. Me being influenced by him, I've seen those comments before, and if you're gonna compare me to him, fuck yeah. Yeah, right.
One of the goats of the game.
Yeah, right. So there's, I'd like to work with Fish. That would be cool. King Gizzard would be cool. Really, I want
to. Going to see them on.
On Monday. I just think it would be really cool. I really want to focus on other mediums and spread my wings.
Because you were saying you were painting, right? So then we joked about fine artists as inspiration before. Do you feel like that's a vertical that you want to start chasing?
I don't know. I just think it allows me to get. With posters and merch, there's parameters, and then comes the art. Okay. With painting, I'm just allowed to fuck off. Yeah, and there's no. I have no. Exactly. There's no expectation for it. By playing, because it's play. That's where I want to be, is play. That kind of state of mind where it's just this free flow. Yeah, I'm in that flow state where I'm just going, and I'm not second guessing anything. I'm not saying no to myself. I'm fucking playing jazz music on a canvas, really. That's what I'd like to get to.
So
and
instead of going to Further Frames tonight, we're going to go see you in a gallery and we're going to see some fine art from Mr. Owen.
Yeah, at some point, it might be lowbrow or whatever, but I'm painting, so that's all that matters.
So who gives a shit? I've seen, and this is the last thing that I want to talk to you about, is content creation, right? And you hate it and you're like, oh fuck, I gotta create content. But for us as fans to see these little snippets or insight into even you teasing work that you're doing, but talking about painting, I've been watching you with this painting. You're like, oh, I've got a couple more hours in on this, and just watching these strokes and seeing what you're doing. Yeah, we don't even know what the fuck it is yet.
Yeah, I don't even know what the fuck it is yet. I mean, I know what the fuck it is, and I know where it's going. It's just having the discipline to sit down and go do it.
But so now, what about the monotony of bullshit that comes with trying to create content, right? Because social media is a whole different game. You are making actual art, and now what you need to do is create these snippets or little bits to then get you to do more, to tease people on the internet. And as somebody who does that for a job, it's fucking draining. That's for somebody that does it all the time. You have to do this for your livelihood, right? Yeah. And so how is that? You were talking about you're going to start a YouTube channel?
That's kind of what I'm aiming for. My buddy Austin, I was hanging out with him the other day. Is Austin Litz. He's in a band called Litz, and he's also a DJ or producer called Crypto Wave Radio. His music's, He's one of my best friends. We were roommates in college, and
Was he one of the ones in the room?
um,
First time he dropped?
no, this was actually I had graduated and I was working,
Okay.
but I went to college. Actually, I was in college with his brother. I was friends with his brother, and then we were roommates together, and then we've just been friends ever since. And like super tight. And yeah, and so he showed me what he's doing. I was like, oh, so I could just set it and forget it and paint. It's like, yeah, totally, like that's exactly it.
Like in your mind, you're like, wait, what? I can actually just do that?
Wait, and he's like, yeah, I'll help you like edit it if you want. I was like, all right, now I have to find a camera. So we'll see where that's. I'm going to do that. Because if I could, like I said, if I could set it and forget it and not have to worry about like going back and then like set whatever, if it's just there, record, and here I am for a few hours. Yeah, I don't think,
let's not pretend that you don't fucking love trolling us with your comments too, okay?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, like that was one of the first connections that I had my oh shit moment because I folded that poster in fucking Nashville, and then One Drop Design made a comment. And I'm like, you're like, I fucking love this. I'm like, I fucking love you. Like, what the fuck is this about?
Well, no, I love that you didn't. It's like it's not serious. You know, people take themselves too seriously. Don't.
Dude, entitlement is a bitch, and that's what I love to hear you like intrinsically in your thought process and all that goes into it, because there's so much plastic, fake, petty bullshit in this world, and that's what I'm a fucking idiot. So I am who I am, but then like there is a reason. Like, what's the reason for this, right? And so like for me, it was super dope, and I can't thank you enough for being able to have you come here. To share some of your story, and now we're gonna go fucking check out your show at Further Frames.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you for everything.